Thank you, Dr. Kadan. After our concluding speaker, there will be a signing of a book from the organization, Their Story is Our Story. Dr. Kadan serves as an advisor to the board of that organization. And the purpose of the organization is to bring awareness of the plight of refugees. And you'll see at your table cards, and those cards are from the organization, Their Story is Our Story. And again, afterwards, there will be a book signing by Twyla Bird, and I believe Dr. Kadan is going to join her if you're interested. Our next speaker is Tim Ballard. Many of you are aware of Tim. He graduated cum laude with a bachelor's degree of Spanish and political science from BYU after serving a mission in Chile. He then went on to graduate summa cum laude with a master's in international politics from the Monterey Institute of International Studies. He began his career with the CIA, where he worked cases dealing with terrorism in Latin America. He spent more than a decade working as a special agent for the Department of Homeland Security, where he was assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and he was deployed as an undercover operative for the U.S. government in an effort to interrupt child trafficking. He's an expert in managing Internet investigations and has trained hundreds of law enforcement officers, both at home and abroad. He received the Distinguished George Washington Honor Medal from the Freedom Foundation at Valley Forge. And in December of 2013, he founded the organization Operation Underground Railroad that is dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating trafficked children all over the world. He's also the CEO of the Nazarene Fund, which works to liberate children and refugees from extremist groups. Please join me in welcoming Tim Ballard this evening.
All right. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Is this working? It's an honor to be here to talk to you about a little bit about what we do, and I want to tell some stories about what modern-day slavery is all about. But I want to do it in a way that also is applicable to all your lives, especially in the medical field. I have a kind of unique message that really what it is, it's a principle that I think is the most important principle I've learned working as an undercover operator for 17 years in 20 different countries, trying to find children who have been trafficked and hurt. And it's the most important thing I've learned. I haven't mastered it, but it's a principle that I want to share with you. And I'm going to kind of share this principle and couch it in some of these stories so you can kind of learn something applicable, but also understand a little bit more about what we do and how we do it. To kind of introduce this principle, I want to take you back to July 3rd, 2006. I was a special agent with the U.S. government at that time, and I was on the border, and I had this life-altering case. So the footage you're going to see here is real footage, by the way. What had happened was an American man named Earl Buchanan was kidnapping children in Mexico and bringing them across the border, bringing them to his home in San Bernardino, California, where he would make child pornography, child rape videos of these children. And I got this call on July 3rd. He had a home inside this compound here, and inside that home he had cameras, and he had pornography and closed-circuit cameras, and he made child pornography. It was horrific, this case. And on July 3rd, I got this call because we had intelligence that he was coming across the border with a 5-year-old boy who he had been abusing since he was a baby. And this was a little boy that I knew from the images, from videos I had seen. And when I saw this little boy, it broke my heart. We interviewed him. We ended up on July 4th, the next day. It was not lost on us. On Independence Day, we raided this guy's compound and found 12 other children who he had been doing this to. Now, when I came home from that case, I was gone for 2 or 3 days, no sleep. I'm driving home, and I'm ready to quit. I'd been doing this for a few years, and I thought this was the first time I'd seen a child from the videos that we were analyzing, and I was done. And I was playing this kind of mental game with myself. I was driving down Highway 8. I lived in the little border town of El Centro, California, and there's 2 off-ramps. And the first off-ramp is 4th Street, which goes to the aftercare home where this little boy was recuperating. We had found his sister, by the way. She had also been being abused in this guy's compound up in San Bernardino. And if I got off on 4th Street, which I was supposed to do to go check in with the little boy and see how he was doing, then this mental game I was playing with myself, that meant I was going to stay in this fight. I was going to continue in this. If I skipped 4th Street and went to Dogwood exit, I was going home. Again, small town, 2 exits. The next exit, Dogwood, is my home. And if I chose that, that meant I was quitting. I was going to turn my badge in and do something else with my life. And as I was driving, I was thinking, I'm going to go to Dogwood exit. I can't do this anymore. I can't handle this. But something happened, and I ended up almost something beyond my will, and I turned onto 4th Street, and I started going to this little boy. Now, in this moment is this principle that I'm talking about that I want to share with you. This thing happened. I didn't know what it was in the moment it happened, but what it was this absolute, I was overcome with optimism, with courage, with happiness, with creativity. And it was crazy because the problem hadn't gone away, the darkness hadn't totally gone away, but I felt equipped all of a sudden because I made this decision. And I often looked back and thought, what was that happened? And how can I get that more often? It was years later when I realized what had happened to me on the 4th Street exit. And I learned what it was when I was with my friend. He's the largest donor to Operation Underground Railroad, and that is the life coach, you probably have heard of him, named Tony Robbins. Tony called me one day, just kind of out of the blue, really, and said, I've been watching you guys on the news. I want to help you. I want to get involved. And we took him on an operation with us. Actually put Tony Robbins undercover with us, which is a hard thing to do, to disguise a 9-foot guy that pretty much everybody knows. Mike, do you have a picture of him undercover with us? So that's how we had to disguise him. We used a Hollywood makeup artist, and we did this operation. I can't tell you where we were. I promised him I never would. But he actually watched us liberate 27 children from 9 different traffickers. But something unique about Tony, he's gone on many trips with us, and he focuses on the healing side. And he goes to our aftercare centers. And one of the aftercare centers he went to was one where 2 children were healing. And these 2 children end up becoming my children. And I'll get into that story a little later. But these are children that we liberated from a rescue operation in Haiti. And we adopted these children. And that's a little context. Again, I'll tell that story in a second. That's a little context for this clip I'm going to show you when Tony Robbins teaches me what happened to me on 4th Street, okay? Because I'm revealing something. So I have a book out called Slave Stealers, and I'm doing an interview with Tony about the book. And I reveal something to him about that experience, and then he teaches me this principle. And if I can share this story, this thing happened. You didn't even know this had happened until 6 months later. I emailed you at Christmas.
I remember, yeah.
When you were with me, and we were seeing those kids, and it broke my heart. Because at this point, they're my kids.
I know.
And I love them like my kids.
I know.
And imagine leaving your kids. Now they're they were in an orphanage that was, it was good. Yeah. They weren't selling them, but it was still an orphanage in Haiti, right? Yeah. And I remember flying away every time just thinking, are they okay? Like, God, please take care of them. I don't know if they really have food, if they really, you don't know what they're telling you. And while we were there, something happened that I didn't tell you about until 6 months later, but I watched you. You walked away with the director of the orphanage. Yeah. And you didn't know this, but I snuck around the other side. I'm like, what's Tony going to say to her? I'm just curious. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I just, it's my spy side. So I'm on the other side of the wall listening and falling to pieces because you said to her, what does it cost to run this place? And she gave you the amount for the year, and you said, I'm going to fund this for 2 years. And I knew
didn't know those were your kids at the time.
What you were doing for me was, my kids are going to be okay. I will have them in 2 years at least. So I know they're good until I get them. And I couldn't even talk to you about it because
I didn't even know it. I didn't know it till this moment. That's beautiful.
And so
You're such a good soul, man.
So what you did for me and my wife in that moment, and it took me 6 months to even be able to tell you that.
Yeah, I didn't make the connection. I knew that, I supported the center, but I didn't realize we've met so many kids. I didn't realize at that point that those are the ones you're going to adopt. So.
Yeah, I think my kids were the ones climbing on your head.
Yes, I remember
They were climbing Mount Tony. They're having a blast.
I had a blast. It was beautiful.
So a couple things as I watched this. One, I have no idea why he grabbed and kissed my hand. But it was weird then, it's still weird. But number two, when we finished that interview, we walked away and I said, what is it with you and giving? Because I've traveled to many places with him, and every time he does this, and I hang out with people who have means, but this is beyond what I've ever seen. He's dropping like hundreds of thousands of dollars just on a whim to different places, almost irrational to me. And I said, what is it with that? Why do you do that? What? And he says, you don't know the secret? I said, what's the secret? He said, the secret to living is giving. I said, okay, that sounds cool. And he says, no, let me explain this to you. Come into my office. We're going to go. I'm going to lock the door. We're going to sit down. I need you for 40 minutes, and I'm going to give you a blessing. Those were his exact words. I'm going to give you a blessing, he said. And I'll explain what it means. The secret to living is giving. So my first thought, anyone seen the movie Shallow Hal? Do you remember when he gives Jack Black a blessing in the elevator? This is what I'm thinking is about to happen to me, right? Remember this movie, Shallow Hal?
I got one. I got one.
Devils, come out!
What the hell are you doing, banana hands?
Okay, so that's my vision of what's about to happen to me and Banana Hands. So we walk in there, and I won't go into the whole thing, but basically he put me through this meditative state, prayerful meditative state. But he got me to think about all the times when either I gave or someone gave to me, just charitable experiences. And by the time he was done and I was fully engrossed in those memories, something happened to me. My entire body was filled with the very thing that happened to me on the 4th Street exit. I felt happy. I felt optimistic. I felt courageous. I felt creative. I remember thinking, I want to go run a marathon right now. I said, what is happening? What is this? And he says, Tim, it's all scientific. And he pointed me to the research, this is awesome to be with a bunch of medical professionals, because you probably know a lot of this research. That what happens when you serve and when you give of yourself, your brain actually releases this beautiful chemical cocktail of endorphins and dopamine and oxytocin. And I started doing this research, and it was incredible. I talked to one professional who works on healing the brains of children who we rescue, and on the aftercare side. And I asked him, I said, is this true? Because it feels true. Tony said it's true. And this is what he told me. He said, the research on this is conclusive through ongoing acts of service, charity, thoughts of kindness, and gratitude. And by the way, prayer is, most the professionals say that is in that list too. The brain releases this powerful cocktail of chemicals, which includes oxytocin, endorphins, etc. These chemicals, in turn, produce in the recipient positive benefits, which can produce higher levels of achievement, increased creativity, positivity, optimism for the future, and enhanced team unity. And as I learned this and thought of what Tony was teaching me and my own experience, even though I didn't know what it was, I thought, this is a gift. Because who doesn't want these? And who doesn't want your family members, your employees, your children, your spouse to have these? These are attributes. You can't give someone a book and say, be creative. Read this and be creative. Be optimistic. Be a team player. Have unity. You can't really just train yourself very easily to have these such important attributes. And Tony Robbins says all his success comes from this secret. he's constantly filled with these positive chemicals. And again, I'm a person of faith, and to me, what you're doing when you're doing this is God's way, I think, to prepare your body physically to open up and soften up and open up to commune with heaven. And so I thought about these principles, and I thought, who wouldn't want these things? And I started thinking about, how do you prove this model? And I thought through my career, how many times I've proven this model out. Again, I am no master of this principle. I just believe in it. I know it's a true principle, and I know it's applicable to everybody. I want to tell you a story about a major operation we did where this principle was absolutely proven in my mind. It was an operation. It turned out to be the biggest rescue operation that I think, in the history of the world. Okay, we ended up rescuing over 120 children, 15 traffickers, and the only way we did it was through the application of this principle. To introduce the case to you, I'm going to show you a CBS News clip, because we got CBS News to cover this massive operation. And then I'll get into the details of what actually happened.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley. Dozens of children were saved from slavery when agents rushed in to break up a sex trafficking ring. Last weekend, police broke up a major sex trafficking ring in Colombia, which has become a destination for tourists looking for sex with boys and girls. The police had help from an American who went undercover to rescue the children, and Elaine Quijano met him.
Tim Ballard has one mission: to track down child traffickers. 4 months ago, Colombian authorities asked him to investigate a tip that children were being sold there as sex slaves.
Within a half hour, this individual walks up to me, starts asking me what I'm here for, what I want, and within minutes, he says, well, I've got kids as young as 11 years old.
Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent, now heads up Operation Underground Railroad, a nonprofit group that rescues trafficked kids. After that first meeting, the Colombians asked him to put together a sting.
No men will be in here, only women.
Operation Underground Railroad spent months planning, renting this house, rigging it with hidden cameras to document the crime, coordinating with Colombian authorities, and negotiating with the traffickers.
How they find these kids is they lure them in by pretending to have a modeling agency. They target them at 9 or 10 years old. And they were telling us that about by 11, they're ready for sex. They're ready to be sold.
What is that like, looking into that kind of person's eyes?
It's horrifying, and this is why. Because I've got a smile in the face of evil. This is the table where we're going to do the negotiation.
Less than 24 hours after the operatives landed, the suspected traffickers arrived on the island, and the final deal with the undercover team began. 54 boys and girls aged 11 to 18 were ushered in for what had been billed as a sex party. They were given candy and drinks and told to wait in this small room.
This little 11-year-old boy, I remember, he asked one of my operatives if they could give him some cocaine or something. He said, they usually give me something because I'm really scared.
By the time the deal was done, the alleged traffickers were set to make $25,000. That transaction was never completed. 25 Colombian special operatives stormed the party, arresting 5 suspects, 4 men and 1 former beauty queen, all charged with child trafficking. The victims, 29 of whom are under 18, were evacuated, given medical exams, and placed in a rehabilitation center where specialists are working to undo the damage.
Right before I got in the boat, we had to walk by this room where the kids were, and they put their hand up. And I touched their hand and see that there's liberation now.
Liberating one child at a time. Elaine Quijano, CBS News, New York.
And we'll be right back.
Thank you. This operation was one of our very first operations. Today we're in 20 countries, including over 20 states here in the United States, doing these types of operations. But this one was special and especially applicable to Tony's principle for reasons I'll explain now. How this case started was I was a U.S. agent still when I was sent to Bogota, Colombia to train a bunch of Colombian operators on police officers on how to infiltrate trafficking rings. And I'd been doing this training quite a bit, and I was frustrated with it. It was a PowerPoint that the State Department wrote, and I didn't think anyone cared about it. I thought every time I did the training, it was check the box, everyone goes home, and no one did anything. And so this time, I got a little courageous, I guess, and when the State Department minder left the room, I shut the laptop down, and I said, I've never done this before, but we're not going to do the training. We're going to just find kids. Where are your kids who are being trafficked right now? Let's make a plan and liberate them. And the police got very excited, and they said, we have to go to Cartagena, Colombia, because that's where the Americans come in on cruise ships. And this was an embarrassing fact that I knew was true. The United States, we represent we are the number one consumers of child rape videos in the world. And so we are the demand, and that's why we had to go to Cartagena, because that's where the Westerners come into town. And as we're planning this operation, I'm not playing it real smart. I'm so excited about it that I'm basically writing proverbial checks that I can't cash. Okay, I'm telling them, look, what do you need? Well, we need 10 American operators to infiltrate, because that's how you get into the traffickers. We have to have Americans. Done. I'll do it. We figured we needed about $120,000 to really pull this off. We were going to rescue over 100 children. Done. I promised these things. Okay, I have zero authority to promise anything. Okay, I work for the U.S. government, and I have zero authority to do anything. And this is not a U.S. case. So I get on the plane, and that's when it hits me. What did I just do? And I thought, this is going to be a bad, bad meeting when I return to my boss. Unfortunately for me, telephone communication travels a lot faster than airplanes, and my boss had received many thank you calls from the government of Colombia, thanking for this amazing support in this effort. So I basically get chewed out pretty bad, and now I'm stuck. I had made myself the bait. We had identified traffickers, and now what do I do? At the same time, I did the same thing to a Haitian father who told me about his son who was kidnapped. And I'll tell you that story in a second, but those were both happening at the same time, where I did the same thing twice. I promised the U.S. government would get involved, and the U.S. government said, sorry, we can't get involved. And I don't blame them. If I was my boss, I'd be telling myself no too. There's no authority, there's no jurisdiction, and there's no budget for it. So that's when we decided we have to start this foundation. It's the only way to fulfill these promises. Now we're free from jurisdictional limitations, we raise some money, and we go in and do these cases. And so when we first went to Colombia, I called the Colombians and said, I know I'm late, but I got the money, I got the operators, let's do this. And we did it. Now, the reason this particular case is so applicable to this principle is because we had nothing to win. Like, we left the government to rescue these kids. We had very little vision beyond that. You know, we weren't thinking what was going to happen next. We'd raised just enough money to go rescue these kids. And I wouldn't have done it except my wife, because I said, we can't. I had 6 kids, you know, at the time. We've had a couple more since then, but I thought I can't. What are we going to do after this operation's over? You can't privatize the rescue of children. I mean, we can do this one case, but my wife ultimately was the one, when I said, I'm not going to do this, this is crazy, she grabbed me by the collars, and after many other events that happened, she said, this was the final debate ender. She said, if you don't do this, she said, I will not let you jeopardize my salvation by not doing this. And so that pretty much ended that debate real quick. She knew that we had to do this. So off we went, and the point I'm making is, I wish I could say this about every operation I've done. This was just about service. There was nothing else I had. We just were doing this to serve these children and get them out. And that's why we had an extra dosage of this principle of things that we needed. In this case, it was creativity. It was an overabundance of creativity that we had in this operation. Let me explain. So when we first met the traffickers, we worked with the prosecutors in Colombia, and they said to me, they said, look, we found this group of traffickers that had 15 children. This guy's name was Eduardo. This is Eduardo right here. He had 15 kids that he sold mostly to American tourists. And it was my job to be his next client. So I end up, and this is the most dangerous part of the operation, I end up in his house with his armed thugs sitting around in a little town outside of Cartagena, Colombia. And I'm sitting there with no weapons. All I have is a wire recording his every word. I have a watch that's recording the video and a camera in my glasses, my sunglasses. And I've been in this situation before, and it's very dangerous. If he finds out who I am, I'm dead. And so my objective was very clear from the prosecutor in Colombia. Just go in there, seal the deal on a party. Have a sex party, as horrible as that is. Have him bring his kids and tell him you'll bring Americans, and that's how we'll get all the kids in one place and we'll liberate 15 kids. And so when you're sitting there and you're looking at who's got the weapons, and you're looking at, you know, you're wondering, does he see my camera? You know, you got a lot of things, and you got these objectives. You don't have time. And by the way, the whole time you have to be happy and acting like you're his best friend. So it's a really complex thing, and you got to act calm and collected. So you don't really stray from your objectives. It's not smart to start getting too creative. And yet, and I attribute it to this principle, and because it was motivated by service, I was able to do it. My mind expanded. I felt creative, and I wasn't happy that we were only going to rescue 15 kids. And so I said to Eduardo, I said, you know, I'm not interested in just your party. I'm interested in being part of your business. Do you know how many Americans I could bring down here to partake in this? And it's big business. This is why an adult prostitute is sold for about half of what a child sex slave is sold for. And so it's lucrative. And so Eduardo believed me, and he opened up his business book, and he started his business plan. And he presented to me the most evil business plan I'd ever seen in my life. And he talked about this property that he just bought at the islands, just a 45-minute boat ride from Cartagena, these beautiful islands. He bought a few acres, and he says, I need to build a hotel. But it's not a hotel, it's going to be a sex club. And it's going to cater to tourists who come in, and it's going to be filled with children. And I said, well, what do you need? He said, I need $1 million. I said, that's easy. I'll get you $1 million. I said, the problem is you only have 15 kids. That's not a good business. I need to know, there needs to be more kids. So he thought about it and eventually did what I was hoping he would do, which was to call all of his competitors. And he brings all his competitors to the table, all the other traffickers in town. So now that number went to 50. If I had more time, I could tell you how that number eventually went to 120 that we rescued in 3 hours on that day. So he brings these to us, these other traffickers. One of them, by the way, her name is Kelly Suarez. Kelly was Miss Cartagena 2012. This beautiful model, famous in town. She won Miss Cartagena on the platform that she was going to help the impoverished youth of Colombia. And she did. Apparently, she was giving out scholarships to 9 and 10-year-old boys and girls to come to learn how to be a model at her school. And some of these kids showed up from Guatemala and Honduras and other places. And it was all a fraud. She was using that to lure children out and kidnap them and then sell them. That's what she was really doing. So she was one of the characters that was brought to this table. And we ended up doing this operation, and that's how we were able to liberate that many kids. The creativity came in again during the operation. A crazy thing happened during the operation. Once the money exchanges hands and we have all the evidence we need, then the Colombian cop raises his wine glass and says, bring out more wine. And that's streaming live to a bunch of go-fast boats sitting behind the island, and you saw them come in on the beach. And so we finished the deal. The Colombian cop, who's dressed as one of our chauffeurs or one of our boat drivers, he says, bring out more wine. And I'm sitting there, and we're waiting. This is the dangerous window right now. because the traffickers think the deal's made, and they're wondering why we're not going to. It was a product testing party. They brought all the kids. And so they're like, go get the kids and go do your thing. And obviously we can't do that. But if we don't do that, they're going to wonder why we're not. So this is the dangerous window, and I'm listening for the engines. Hurry up. We time this. It should be 3.5 minutes. You should be here. We can hold them off for 3.5 minutes, but not much longer. I don't hear the engines. I walk to the edge of the island and to the edge of the house on the dock. I don't hear the engines. The Colombian cop is sweating in the corner. I walk over to him. I said, what's going on? He says, look, I wasn't watching my texts. What happened was the social workers, the aftercare providers come in on the end of that stick. They come in when the cops raid, they come right in after. That's their policy, that's our policy. So the children know right away, you are safe, you're not in trouble, we're here to help you. And what happened that morning was the social workers' boat broke down. And the texts were coming through, but no one was looking at them. And they said, you are not, the cop said, we have been ordered not to raid. But we'll probably be able to raid in about 30 minutes. And I'm thinking, we're going to be dead in 30 minutes. What are we going to say to these guys? And so we sat back, and it was the most amazing thing, because the other guys who I had with me, I couldn't afford to pay them anything. So no competing interests, again, on this case. Again, it's just not, I wish we could replicate this all the time, but it's hard in this world. But these guys were all volunteers. So we were all like just doing this for service. And we didn't even have time to talk or plan. It just happened. We all almost had the same thought at the same time. And I led out and I said to Eduardo, I said, hey, before we kind of, consummate this deal and bring out these kids, there's one more thing we got to talk about. We had decided we were going to split the profits on this hotel 50-50. And I told Eduardo, I said, now, you probably don't think it's my business how you 5 traffickers, or you guys, are going to split your 50%. We're going to, on our side, it's going to be equal. Have you talked about it? Because if you guys aren't stable in your relationship on your half, it could affect us. So I just need to know that you've talked about it. They said, yeah, we're all taking equal parts. And I said, oh, that's a really bad idea. I said, Kelly is a way better recruiter than all of you guys. I really think she should get about at least 80% of your 50%. And then we just stood back and just watched. And they turned on each other. And 30 minutes later, when the cops rolled into that island, they were still fighting, physically beating each other up over who was a better trafficker. And it saved our lives. Again, and I knew we could attribute this to the fruits that come from service, that it's a true principle. Another fun thing about this case that I'm going to share with you, we were approached by some Hollywood producers, 20th Century Fox, after this operation. And they said, this is an amazing story. We want to hear more about it. If you remember the last picture, there was one little girl on a bed that CBS News showed. I think we can pull it up. This picture has just been something so important to me. This little girl she thinks she's about to be raped again. This is 3 minutes before those cops come in. It was picked up by our undercover cameras. She's been told to get in position because the Americans are coming in. But what she doesn't know, what we couldn't tell her, is that wasn't going to happen ever again, that she was going to be liberated and this was going to be done. Well, her story was what 20th Century Fox was really interested in. Where did she come from? How did she get here? And so they wrote this entire script. The movie is called The Sound of Freedom. About 2 Decembers ago, they came to me and they said, we're finally ready to shoot the film. We're going to actually film it. And I didn't think they were ever going to actually do it because all my research told me that most concepts never become movies. And they said to me, who do you want to play you? Which is a very strange question for someone to ask. What Hollywood actor do you want to play you in a movie? And I said, well, I guess my favorite actor. And that's an actor named Jim Caviezel. Have you heard of Jim Caviezel? He's in The Count of Monte Cristo. He's Jesus in and Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. And I just love him. I love his movies. And they said, absolutely not. There's no way that he looks nothing like you. we got to find someone who looks like you. I said, I don't care if they look like, if he looks like me. And I got like a little bit more upset because they were so adamant. And I said, no, if you want to do this, you're going to give him the script. And they did. They gave him the script. They said, well, we won't hear back for probably 2 months. But they sent him the script on a Sunday. He came back on Wednesday. And he says, I'm in. We're going to do this. They filmed this movie last summer. Mira Sorvino, the Academy Award-winning actress, plays my wife, Catherine. And the movie comes out in this fall. And a few months ago, 20th Century Fox sent me an email, and they said, hey, we just want to show you a link. They sent me a link. They said, we're making good progress. Don't tell anyone the movie's coming out because we have to make sure we control the marketing when the trailer comes out. And do not, under any circumstances, show this clip to anybody. This is just for you. And I specifically remember getting that email, and I remember not replying with anything like, okay. So here it is.
Timoteo, the kid, Miguel, is back with his father, right?
Yes.
How'd that make you feel? Giving a child his freedom.
Good.
What kind of good are we talking about here?
Kind that brings hope.
Why are you doing it?
Because God's children are not for sale.
Do you
This job tears you to pieces. And this is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
By most estimates, there are 6 million children in some form of slavery in the world today. Labor, sex, and even organ harvesting. And I don't mean to darken the mood because I feel like our message is one of hope because we know how to get them out. Like I said before, we're in 20 countries. We bring every tool available. Mostly it's digital tools. We build digital forensic labs in regions that don't have them. And for example, we built one in Thailand a few years ago. I have a 6-man team full-time out there running that with the Thai police. We average about 15 rescue operations a month out of that digital forensic lab. But we bring all these tools. And so this is a message of hope. And the person who I have found more hope from than anyone else, my hero, my living hero right now, is the subject of the next example I'm going to give you of Tony Robbins' principle about how service brings light in the darkness. His name is Gestno Marty. Gestno is the Haitian father, and he lived in Utah for a time, and during that time when he lived here and worked, he had a son named Gardy. Gardy was born in St. George. About 2 years after he was born, they moved back to Port-au-Prince, where Gestno Marty was serving as a bishop for the LDS Church. And after church one day, this little boy was kidnapped from the parking lot of the church by traffickers and taken and gone forever with very little leads. Now, this is something that happens daily in a place like Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Haiti's number 3 per capita in the world for child trafficking. And when I learned about this case, when I was a government agent, I believed that we could make it a U.S. case because the boy was a U.S. citizen. And just like with Colombia, I couldn't make it a case, and so this became the second operation that we raised money for in the very beginning to go find this little boy. So we went to Haiti. After Colombia, we went to Haiti. And this is when I learned who my hero was. This man, his father, Gestno Marty. We went to Haiti to find this little boy. And I wish I had more time to tell you all the details, but we identified the captors. And what they had been doing, and this is very typical in a high trafficking area, especially after an earthquake, like the 2010 earthquake that happened in Haiti. What traffickers do, what the news always fails to talk about, is traffickers converge on disasters. Because about 300,000 people were killed overnight in that earthquake. But what no one talked about was the 500,000 children that were orphaned overnight. And they're literally walking the streets. Blood, smoke, chaos everywhere, walking alone, and the traffickers swoop in. But what these traffickers were doing is they just put a little sign over a compound that says, orphanage. They drew a cartoon, painted a cartoon on the side of the wall. And so innocent people said, well, the best I can do is take these children and take them to the local orphanage. Not knowing that they're actually supplying traffickers who are now turning around and selling these children to pedophiles, to slave labor organizations, and to organ harvesters. So we found one of these compounds that was posing as an orphanage because we believed that little Gardy was inside. And the police asked me to go undercover because, again, we're Americans and we can get there quicker because we are the clients the traffickers are looking to sell to. We went in again with undercover cameras, audio, video, everywhere. We walk into this place, and they make it very clear within minutes that these kids are for sale, and I can buy any one of them. And I'm looking for Gardy, and I can't find him. There's 28 starving children. I can tell. I'm not a doctor, but I can tell they're starving. I see the signs, the grays in their eyes, the protruding tummies. No food in the place. And the police told me that if they offer a child, accept it, buy the child, make it a sting operation, get the evidence that they're selling kids, and that will take this place down. And then we can go find Gardy, if he's there or somewhere else. So I've got to pick a kid to buy. And I didn't think it mattered, so I'm just looking around, and you're going to see footage from from my companion's camera. When I turned around, and I didn't choose this kid. You can see from the video, he chose me. And I look at him, and this is him. And I knew he was the one I was going to buy. So I pick up this little boy, and there's one of the traffickers. And I pick this little boy up, and I walk into one of these dark outbuildings in this compound. The compound's about half the size of this room. But it's cinder block walls, about 12 feet high, and these little outbuildings. And I walk into one of them, and I have this little boy in my arms, and I'm looking for Gardy. I have my camera on. I'm trying to get all the evidence. And the darker it gets inside, the quieter it gets as I get deeper into this building, the easier I can hear what was always right behind me, and that was the footsteps of a child, another child. And I swing around with the kid in my arms, and I see this little girl. The kid's about 2, this little girl's about 3. And she's looking at me with this tense look, courageous look, really. And I don't want her to cause problems, so I give her a candy bar, and she takes that bar, and I say, you gotta go outside and eat it. And then she does something I've never seen a child do, including my biological children. I've never seen them do this, okay, and they're not starving. She takes that candy bar, and without even thinking, almost like muscle memory, she breaks it in half without taking her eyes off the little boy in my arms, and she hands the other half of that candy bar to him. And then it hits me. This is her little brother. And what have I done? How many Americans have come to this place, picked up a child, and that kid is never seen again? And I'm just contributing to this child's nightmare. So I immediately put the kid down once I realized what I was doing, and I put the child down, and this little girl grabbed her little brother. She pulled him into her arms and looked at me like, you're not going to get through me. And I loved it. I was just like, who is this little girl? She's awesome. So I knelt down, and I grabbed both their hands, and I did something an undercover operator is never supposed to do, especially mid-operation, and I told them who I was. And I told them that I was their friend, that I wasn't a bad guy, and that I was here to get them out. And this little girl, her name is Colleen, she knew it, and she believed me, and she actually helped me as we went through the rest of the operation, made the purchase. We went to a different hotel to do the actual purchase where we had better camera to get the evidence. This is a picture of the actual final deal. The money's transferred hands. The police come in as the traffickers leave. Everyone gets arrested, including me. That's me getting arrested. I didn't, just to keep my cover. And the bad guys go down, and the 28 kids are liberated. And it was a great operation. It worked. It was wonderful until 45 minutes later when it wasn't wonderful. When we got a phone call from the police at the orphanage, and they just said, we're so sorry. Gardy's not here. He's already been sold. And I'm just going to tell you, we have not yet found him. We're going in 2 weeks. We have a lead. I think we're closer than we've ever been, so pray for this little boy. We will find him. By the way, we've actually rescued over 100 children on that island looking for him. So now I've got to go tell his father. This is going to be the most important conversation probably I've ever had with any human being in my life. And I'm scared to death. I'm calling him on his cell phone to try to make it a cell phone call, but he won't pick up. His phone's not working. So I've got to go to him. He's waiting in another hotel room, waiting to hear the good news that we have his son. And this is when I learned who Gestno Marty is. When I first met him, by the way, I remember he had this light about him, this light in his eyes, this light in his smile, and I couldn't understand it because I'm thinking if I was him, I would be living in the fetal position due to what he's going through. And yet he had this light. And I didn't think much about what it was, but in this moment I started to. And I sat down, and he sees me walk in, and I look at him, he looks at me, and I don't need to say anything. I start crying before I even get to where he's sitting. And he starts crying, and we don't say anything. He knows I don't have his kid. He knows his kid wasn't there. I was able to eke out to him that we did get the bad guys, and we did get the 28 kids out. And so he cries for like 20 seconds. I'm prepared to cry for the next couple hours, okay? 20 seconds, and he pops his head up, and he's smiling again. And he says, stop crying. I said, why? This is really sad. And he says, don't you realize what just happened? He said, 28 kids were just rescued. I said, yeah, but I'm worried about the one that wasn't. He says, no, you're missing it. He said this, he said, if my child was never kidnapped, had he not been kidnapped, these 28 kids would never have been liberated. No one would have come for them. They'd still be in slavery. And then he said the most profound thing I've ever heard someone say. He said, if I have to give up my son so that these 28 kids can be rescued, that is a burden I'm willing to bear. That is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And that's when it hit me, the application of this principle. This man is in hell. And by the way, when he lost his son, 3 weeks later, while he was looking for him in the streets, that's when that earthquake hit, which took his mother, his best friend, his sister, and his brother, and almost killed his wife. While he's dealing with this already indescribable hell. And so I'm thinking, this guy's in hell, how does he get out? He figured out how to get out. He gets out by serving, by applying Tony's principle, and it fills him with light. It opens him up. He communes with heaven. He receives the physiological reactions that makes him a happy person full of light. And then to prove that he actually meant, that he believed what he said to me, the next day he went to the police station. I went with him, and he said to the police, he said, if you can't find the children of these 28, I will bring home any of the fatherless and motherless children in this group. Any of these children who were rescued in the name of my son, I will bring them home. I will be their father. My wife will be their mother. And he went home that very day with 8 of those 28 children. Not knowing, by the way, how he's going to take care of them. He doesn't have a lot of money. Not knowing that we were going to come with donors and finance this amazing and irrational and crazy investment. He didn't ask for that. He just did what was right. He gave like Tony gives. He just gave, and because he knows that fills him with light and allows him to survive, to be happy in darkness. I went home that night after this, and I called my wife, and I just said, can you believe this story? I don't usually tell my wife the details because they're kind of scary, and I don't want her to worry too much, but I told her the story because I couldn't sleep. I told her it's crazy ups and downs, and with the Gestno Marty, what he just did. And I told my wife on that phone call conversation from a little hotel room in Port-au-Prince, I said, I want to be like Gestno Marty. He's my hero. I want to be like that guy. And she says, great. See, my wife, you got to be careful what I say to her. She says, great, let's do it. Let's be like him. I said, okay. She's like, those 2 kids, Colleen and Colleen, that you talked about, the 2 that I just told you about, let's bring them home. Because their parents had been killed in the earthquake. That's how they ended up in that place. I said, what? She says, yeah, let's adopt them. I said, are you kidding me? We already have 6. And I'm never home, and we're in a very risky nonprofit business. Another one was going to come accidentally, number 7, later. Okay, we didn't even know about that. And she wants to bring 2 more? But we did it. We did it. Now, and this was important, and those kids just came home a year ago. It took 3 years to actually go through the adoption process. This is the day that they were rescued. And I went back. I got a lot of time. I had 3 years working on the adoption process to get to know these kids. And the first day I saw them, before they knew they were coming home, like I told you, they picked me that day, and then they picked me again. I think when I saw them for the first time after the rescue, they remembered me. And little Colleen, who stood bravely with the half of the candy bar in her hand, she comes running to me, and she says, the first time she saw me, and she said, with her hands in the air, she said, oh, Papa Blanc, Papa Blanc. That means white daddy. And she called me Papa Blanc for 3 years. And even once they were back here in Utah with us, they continued. And I said, look, it was cute in Haiti. Like, it's not going to fly here in this country, okay? It's just daddy. But I got to know this little girl. And I remembered that story, how she had courage in front of me, thinking I was a bad guy. I also had another experience with her when she was back in a legitimate orphanage while we were in the process of adopting. And I remember she came to me one day and she pulled out of my backpack when I was visiting her a box of candy bars, of protein bars. That was the meal plan for my team that week. She took it and she ran inside the orphanage house thinking it was funny, and she was gone. And the director of aftercare for OUR was with me, and she said, oh, your daughter, Colleen, she might be a hoarder. You need to keep an eye on this. And she explained to me that when children, even, when there's an abundance of food, if they live during a time of their life when there was no food, sometimes they will still hoard food. And she thought that's what little Colleen was probably doing. And she came out of the house a few minutes later, showed me the empty box, and kind of smirked and kind of threw it down. And I walked up to her and I said, you got to show me where the chocolate is. And she grabbed my hand and said, oh, I'll show you, Papa Blanc, where it is. And I thought, she's too excited. Because I'm thinking I'm going to find this maggot-infested nest of old food, right, with these fresh chocolate bars poking out. But that's not what she was going to show me. She ran me upstairs, she opened the door, and there was about 10 little children, about 6, 7 years old, that were supposed to be doing their schoolwork, but instead they each had what they thought was a chocolate bar, but you and I know protein bars are not chocolate bars. And these little kids are gnawing at it, trying to figure out why they can't bite into it. And I just started laughing, and I thought, this is so cute. And then it became not just cute, but powerful. Because a little boy was in the corner crying. And Colleen said to me, Papa Blanc, please, I just need one more bar. Little Pierre did not get one. I ran out. And I stepped back and I looked at her hands, no bar. I looked at her pockets, she had nothing. I counted the number of bars in children's hands against the count on the box. She had given every single bar away. And here she was in this moment, not asking for 2, but asking for 1, for this little boy. Again, not thinking about herself. 6 months later, I'm back. It's Christmas time. We brought presents for all 35 children to this orphanage. Lots of presents. And Colleen was the first to line up, but not for the reason that most kids would be the first to line up. She took every toy out of every bag and played Santa Claus and gave everything away until there was no toys left, and she sat back, and I watched her. And she sat back and just smiled as she watched all her little classmates playing with toys. And I thought that might happen, so I brought another bag just for her, and I said, these are yours. You have to keep these. Your brothers and sisters back home bought these for you. You have to keep them. And she understood. She said she understood. And then I saw her look at the toys, look at me, looking at her, looked at the kids. All of the kids had plenty of toys. And I thought, oh my gosh, she wants to give them away. And so I did a little trick we parents do where we look away, pretending not to watch, but we're watching. And when she thought I was sufficiently distracted, she took that little duffel bag, she dragged it into the orphanage house where all the kids were, and proceeded to give every single one of her toys away again. Except for the one present, which was the book, Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go, and she sat there and just stared at it and sat in a corner, and I just sat back and watched, like dumbfounded. And she wasn't turning the pages, and I went and sat down next to her, and I realized why she wasn't turning the pages. Because she was just zoned in on the Christmas card that my wife had put in the title page, and she just stared at it. Because all she wanted was that. Now, my little boy, Collet, her little brother, full disclaimer, he keeps all his candy, he keeps all his toys. But there's a reason, because he never had to know what was happening. He never knew the danger they were in. She made sure he didn't know. And at 2, 3, 4 years old, this little girl learned Tony's principle. Now, she couldn't stand here and articulate with words what it was that she was doing. She was in the trenches of slavery. The only adults in her life wanted to hurt her. And she had to take care of her little brother. And she just figured out that when she gave of herself, when she was charitable, something happened to her. She was filled with courage and ideas and creativity, and that saved her life. And more importantly to her, saved her little brother's life until we were able to pull them out. This is a true principle, and it's a principle that's applicable to every single one of us. To conclude, I want to show you a quick video. There's a Utah singing group called Gentry. Have you heard of Gentry? Have you heard of Madeline Page? She was a contestant on The Voice, I think, and also a famous Utah singer. They came to us several years ago and said, we want to do a music video. We wanted to bring awareness to Operation Underground Railroad. Will you give us some rescue footage? And we just gave them a bunch of stuff. We didn't direct anything. And they put together this video, and it's this beautiful video because unbeknownst to them, they actually told the story that I just told you. You're going to see the live footage, the real footage of the rescue of my kids. And the songs they chose, I feel, demonstrate the principle that I'm trying to share about finding light in the dark. There's two songs. You recognize both. The first one is Someone in Darkness. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone who you can help. Maybe it's a child in need, a refugee. And then the second song comes in and it's The Light. This is Gentry and Madeline Page. I mean, let's face it. These kids that we're going to save tomorrow, they're on the auction block. They're being sold.
Say something, I'm giving up on you. I'll be the one if you want me to.
Anywhere I would have followed you.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
And I am feeling so small. It was over my head. I know nothing at all. And I will stumble and fall. I'm still learning to love, just starting to crawl. Say something, I'm giving up on you. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you. Anywhere I would have followed you. Say something, I'm giving up on you.
In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie.
So as I'm looking out in the crowd and watching you watch this, like I've watched thousands of people watch this, I want to suggest something to you. There's a lot of you thinking right now, because I know, because you'll come up to me afterwards and say this, I want to go undercover. I have no experience. I've never been law enforcement. I have no military experience, but I will go undercover right now to rescue one of these kids. Now, there's some of you thinking this right now. Now that is super irrational, but I love it. But it's let me explain what's happening to you when you're having these thoughts. Just by learning the story of Gestno Marty and my little daughter Colleen, and seeing these acts of service and seeing Tony's principle applied, just by watching it, you got a little dose of that chemical cocktail, which is creating these feelings in you right now. And so my invitation to you and to me, like I said, I'm not a master of this. I need to keep learning this, is to find ways to serve. And I'm not here to say, hey, support Operation Underground Railroad. I don't care what it is you do. There's 1,000 different things to serve. There's need and there's pain and there's suffering everywhere. And it needs you. And my invitation is find somebody or something, some cause to serve. Because not only will it bless the lives of those people, but it will become the secret to your own success as you are blessed and you are changed into something so much better than what you are. That is my challenge. Thank you for letting me come here tonight. And I would love to, I know I went a little over my time, but I'd be happy to stay and answer any questions anybody has. Yes, ma'am. Great question. Have I blown my cover? The answer is absolutely I have. So I had to make a decision about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. My wife made it for me, really. She said, you've got to go promote the cause, and you've got to get out in front of the cameras, and you've got to stop doing undercover because you're going to get killed. So for a while, I had a Hollywood makeup artist do my face-up so I could stay in the game. But then there's only so many faces that they can give you. And then I ended up hiring people who were better than me at it anyway, at going undercover. So yes, I no longer go undercover, but I still oversee the operations. Anyone? Yes, sir.
Does this, okay.
Great question. So we're in 20 countries, and the question is, how do we avoid the corruption, which is so famous in all these countries that we work in? And to answer that question, we've only had a problem once. And you can watch how that came out in a documentary about us. It's on Amazon. It's called Operation Two Saint. Michael put it on the screen so you can see. Go watch this. It's free on Amazon Prime. It was in Haiti. It was an operation we did. But what we do is we didn't have the benefit in Haiti, which is why we couldn't employ this tactic. But we are all from the U.S. government. And so we go back to the U.S. government, to our U.S. embassies. And we say, who do you work with? The U.S. Embassy has what's called vetted units in every office, which they find police and prosecutors that are foreign nationals in that country, and they train them, they background check them, they send them to the United States, and that's who they work with. And so we work with who the U.S. government works with, and that is how we avoid corruption problems. And then we put the U.S. government on it. We bring them and make them part of the case, which they love, because it's minimal input, maximum output for them, which we're happy with. And then they're watching, and they say, well, you better follow up with this. You better not. If you're corrupt, we're going to report back to the White House, and you're not going to get your grants this year. So that's also, we leverage that relationship. Yes?
Okay, I just want to share with you something that happened this last year. My son died 9 months ago yesterday.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I've been doing fundraising for Operation Underground Railroad for
Thank
years
you.
now. We did one of the rescues in Colombia.
Thank you.
And we started doing the electronic dogs
Yes.
here in the United States.
Thank you. Those are awesome.
And number one, I want to tell you, this is the most egregious thing that is happening in the United States as well. And in January, when you talk about how you get creative and how thoughts come to you. And as I've worked with Tony Robbins for years as well, in January, I had a thought come because I was trying to figure out what to do for my son for his birthday in February. And I decided that I felt very, very driven to sponsor a dog in my son's name.
Wow.
For this purpose.
Wow.
And so I called them and I said, this is what I want to do. And they said, Sue, it could take you a year to get a dog. It takes that long. But I want you to know, this work is so amazing.
What's your son's name? I'm sorry.
His name was Sean Neil Brenchley.
And what's the dog's going to be? What's the dog's
The
name?
dog's name is Gracious Champion, and we call him Champ because Sean means gracious gift
Wow.
from God. And
Thank you so much.
Neil means champion, someone who fights for those who cannot fight for themselves. And so we got the dog in April. He's in training.
Wow.
And he will go into service about the 1
Thank
year
you.
mark for
Thank
my
you
son's
so much.
dad.
Let me explain. Thank you. Let me explain what these dogs are. These dogs are digital detection dogs. It's the coolest thing. So American pedophiles are the worst. They're driving the demand. It's because of them that children are kidnapped and sold, because they want to watch it. They want to produce these videos, and nowadays, as you know, you can save your dirty material on thumb drives so small that the police just can't find them. They hide them in floorboards. They hide them in curtains. They tape them under their desk. You're not going to find it. So we are training dogs that are digital detection dogs, that they will sniff out any digital media, just like a bomb dog would find a bomb or a drug dog would find drugs. These dogs will find digital media. So it only works when you take them into a search warrant, where you're looking for, you can't take it to an airport, right? Everyone will get sniffed, right? Everyone will get taken down. It's when you're in a pedophile's home, you know it's a pedophile, you know they have child pornography, because that's why you're there. This dog will find that. Do you remember the Subway guy, Jared? He was the Subway guy who got busted for child pornography and for having sex with children. It was a digital forensic dog that took him down. He had all his child porn hidden. The digital forensic dog took him down. This is changing the game. And so thank you. It's one of the most valuable tools. Most law enforcement in the U.S. do not have this. So we are trying to supply U.S. law enforcement with this tool.
And we need to do more. So this is one way. We've got to do it in the U.S. too, not just in Colombia. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Tim. Just wanted to thank you for coming out. I know this speaking event is quite unique to a medical conference. It's not really a topic that you hear in this industry too often. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Ainsley Rodriguez, and I am currently the Director of Operations for Latin America for Gore-Tex. I know many of the physicians here likely know gore grafts, vascular grafts. I work in Mexico mainly, in Sao Paulo, hablo español, falo portugués. And I love my job. I've been doing it for 7 years now. However, that is not my main mission. I have been called by God to assist in the aftercare of the victims that you are rescuing. I don't know if that's in conjunction with Underground Railroad, but I am very certain of that. And so my question to you is, will you talk to me when you have some free time so you can point me in the direction? I'm in contact with Jessica Mass through LinkedIn and through email, but I'm wondering where to start. So my question is, after this, would you be willing to speak with me?
Absolutely. I'm going to be signing books, so wherever that is, let's meet there.
Okay.
And I got a couple guys here who can also help connect you.
Thank you.
So our aftercare is the most important part of our operation. When we rescue a kid, if we rescue 2 children in Mexico, let's say, and we take them to one of our aftercare homes that already has 100 kids, we take on all the 100. So we actually are caring for over 5,000 survivors of sex trafficking right now in 20 different countries, including the United States. So it is the most important part of our mission. There is no rescue if there's not a rehabilitation, if they cannot be integrated back into society. And so that is where we focus so much of our attention. So thank you very much for that.
Tim, it's a pleasure to see you again. I got to see you at the Eternal Core Conference.
Oh, yeah.
But one concern, actually, that's even happened since then, is that it's not just a major problem in the United States. It's a major problem here at home. Right here at home, on the news, there's been people. We have people that have been caught with child sexual predators.
Oh, yeah, every week, every single week. There's not a week that goes by in Utah that a child pornographer or pedophile is not arrested. So you know that.
So I think the question is how do we change the game plan? What do we need to? I guess I'm wondering if we need to contact our legislators to come down harder on these people, or how we change the environment, the game plan here at home to get rid of this.
So you do it by you have to have a consequence, right? In so many jurisdictions overseas, but here also, they have no game. They have no resources, expertise, and how to find the pedophiles in our community. And we find those jurisdictions and we go to them and we try to supply them. Now here in Utah, we are very blessed, we are very lucky. I spent 10 years on a task force called the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I was in the one in San Diego, and right before I quit my job, I was in the one here in Utah. And I've been on several. The one in Utah is hands down the best task force in the nation. Wow. And Operation Underground Railroad works hand in hand with the Utah Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. And they are making arrests, like I told you, every single week. Multiple arrests every week. Pedophiles and child pornographers, child molesters, every single week. And we're privy to a lot of that because we are supporting, directly supporting. So if you want to get involved directly in combating it here in Utah, come talk to us. And we can direct you in that way so you can even learn more and get more involved in what we're doing here in Utah. But I will say, and I can say confidently, there's no state in the union that is doing more to keep our kids safe than Utah.
Oh, cool.
For sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will, if you want to, did I hear that right? Thank you. Thank you. Am I signing books? I'm signing books out there? Okay, so I'll be heading out there, and hopefully I'll get to chat with some of you. Thanks.